But what about personality in that picture?
I don't know.
I'm thinking of a mongoloid baby. Now, where
I don't think if the full capacity for 7 adjutant mind function was never present, I don't think the Father ever bestowed personality. That's an animal. Just like the man in Naples, to whom Jesus gave money but spoke no words of encouragement. And when Gained got after him, Jesus mildly replied, Gained, the man is not a real human being. The idiot is not a person.
I was discussing that with someone this week, and they said, well, that very thing, and they said, well, wouldn't they be the first to survive, since God loves all his children, he loves them most for being...
But you must be a person to be a son.
Yeah, well, they figured this because
Yeah.
the child was mentally deficient.
The mere fact that we have something which is human-like in form does not mean we have a human being.
Well, that's what I tried.
And for the same reason, let's say that any one of us is in an accident and we sustain a brain injury which impairs the function of human mind. They're not going to, and this is non-repairable, and they would know. They simply reckon us as having died, release the thought adjuster, wind up our affairs, and they're not concerned if our body lingers on in a sanitarium for 10 years. We're dead.
With no chance of later survival.
With every chance of later survival. Sure, they just don't count those last 10 years.
I see.
It's physical life, but not human life, Marvin. Betty?
It's probably a foolish question, but what if a person has attained a third degree of spirituality?
I've thought of that.
Body is lingering.
I'll be darned if I know, Betty. I'll bet a cookie that you go right on.
So you really have two.
The Moranchi Jesus was quite independent of the physical body of Jesus. Of course, that body was dead. I have a feeling you might go on.
Because people have been known to live for 40 and 50 years in that condition.
As vegetables, yes.
Human vegetables.
Right. And I would say this, if we could know that it was hopeless, I think we'd be perfectly justified in putting that body to death.
Yeah.
We're not putting a human being to death. The only reason we don't is because we hope against hope that we can do something.
That would apply to mentally retarded children.
Yes. I think here's your break point. If you can't get a 7 adjutant mind functioning, you don't have a human being. And if you don't have a human being, then you're not only missing the adjutants of worship and wisdom, you're missing personality, the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of truth, and the thought adjuster. You're missing all human equipment. You have a mammal, period. That being is not held to be morally accountable. That being is not reckoned as being human. Now you can have some borderline cases. And when they talk about seraphic guardians of destiny, as I recall, there are a group of seraphim assigned to deal with retarded humans. But here you have got the equipment. It just isn't working very well, but it's there. You see, there is no twilight zone. The Father either does or does not bestow personality. And so you either have a true human being or else you don't have a human being. And thank the Lord that it's God himself that makes that decision, because he can tell. Before we go back to how we get off this planet, here's the problem. Here's the paradox of civilization. Might does not make right, but might does make what has been and now is. The problem is, how do you attach might to the service of right? Until you make that attachment, you're living in a dream. You're on Pink Cloud 42. Another example of the same problem. We should love our fellow men. We should be kind to them. They're the boss's kids. He loves them. There's one attitude. The other side of the coin. If you let the inferior human strains multiply enough, And remember, that reduces mind potential and in the long run, spirit receptivity. And if you restrict the multiplication of normal to better than average strains enough, this means you are cutting down the potential for brain power and spirit receptivity in society. And if you get real sentimental and unscientific in your attitude of affection for your fellow man, you are dooming your civilization to destruction. Because pretty soon there isn't enough brains to keep the show on the road. And she goes kaput. I think this basically is why Rome went down. The term proletariat originally was used in upper crust Roman society, and it meant the bearers of the next generation. And if you run out of brains, you're going to run out of civilization. So you've got to balance your Christian sentimentality on the one hand with an understanding of scientific law on the other. Because until you reconcile your religious attitude of brotherhood to the hard-boiled facts of genetics, you are not going to succeed. And there's no use closing your eyes to these hard-boiled facts. They're here, and if you don't go with them, they will whip you. There's another paradox.
Somewhere the papers say that it is the people that make civilization, not civilization that makes the people.
Quite right. You've got two standards of measurement in the universe. If you love God, that's all He wants. You accept sonship. But the Supreme Being has a different standard. He wants you to pay off. He wants you to do something. And there's the presentation of the age-old controversy of faith and works. It's not one or the other. It starts with faith and then produce, if you have the ability. Yeah. You asked me to run a forecast of the next 10 years. Would you like the science fiction a little bit? This little plot would make a good science fiction story. It was hatched up on the way to California on one of the trips. I was coming out here with Sandy Wall. And he's a very brilliant engineer, and incidentally the spark plug of my group in Connecticut. And Sandy was talking about his visualization of the manufacturing developments of the future, and I was adding to it my visualization of the reactions of human nature, and here's the story. Don't take this seriously. But we've worked very hard, and let's fictionize for a little bit. Sandy feels that it's within the range of the power of technology. We're not going to the moon now. This is all going to take place on Earth. To produce robot-like machines of increasing complexity and versatility, which will displace workers right on the production line, and which will have increasingly built-in feedback circuits so that they can discriminate and even turn on a red light which says, help, help, I'm in trouble. I've hit something I can't solve. This is going to result in a tremendous diminution of the demands of working hours. I don't think Mr. Hoffa and Mr. Ruther are going to let industry cash in on very much of these gains. The work week could slide down to 20 hours, to 18 hours, with an actual increase in take-home pay. And now we've got a problem. We have leisure without culture. And let's just add a couple of more real lethal ingredients. Number one, lots of alcohol. Number two, oral contraceptives. You take a pill, no pregnancy. Number three, even more potent antibiotics. no fear of any venereal infection or whatnot. And I can see a real lost weekend. This is going to make the Roman Saturnalia look like a piker. I was telling this to one of my friends who's about 65. He said, God, I wish I weren't so old. Now what happens when the human race comes off this big jag? This is no different than what Arnold Toynbee points out is challenge and response. I think when we wake up on the morrow of this tremendous lost weekend, which may be a lost decade and may be a lost generation, I think we will, this to me could happen. I think we are going to set a new pattern for human beings. Because who will be the biologic survivors of this time of sociological troubles, to use Toynbee's expressions? It's a cinch that we will have permanently divorced procreation from passion, won't we? Up until now, the human race has operated on, well, here's the qualifications for the fathers and mothers of mankind. Papa was a successful hunter of both meat and women. This is not very nice, but it's a fact. He succeeded in hunting meat, and he succeeded in hunting women. And Mama at least made sure she did not outrun Papa. She got caught, and she loved babies. Those women who didn't love babies are not the mothers of the human race. Those men who hunted meat only are not the fathers of the human race. But after this lost weekend, or lost generation, the people who would be alive on Earth when this generation passed would be there for a new reason. Because Papa and Mama wanted children. And all of a sudden, the more tender parental emotion would become the prime factor in biologic survival for the first time on Earth. This has never been true up until now. This is partially true today. I think that out of this, oh my Lord, moral, ethical, sociological holocaust, which Sandy and I cooked up on the Super Chief, we could emerge with a far finer human race than the world has ever seen. How about a coffee break? And then we'll go back to how we get off a planet. After the twins took off on their flight, there arrived on this world the Nebadon Archangel of initial planetary circuit establishment. And the life carriers gathered around the planetary pole of space communication and got their first message from Salvington. And from the chief of the Archangel Corps, transmitting greetings and acknowledging that man had evolved on Urantia. And then they got greetings from the Most High's Evidentia. And then they got greetings from Lucifer. The life carriers were just busting their buttons to help these twins. But they could not help the twins until the twins decided to flee. And when the twins decided to flee, then the life carriers could add to that decision the feeling northward. You see, the twins didn't know geography. And it was very necessary that they flee in the right direction. And they were faced with a decision of prime magnitude beyond their capabilities. And so they were required to do what they could do, and they were given what they couldn't do. Upon the decision to flee, the life carriers superimposed the feeling northward. I think that is the clearest exposition of the interrelationship of human mind and human decision and divine health. And I just think that's a wonderful paragraph. The twins decided to flee, and the life carriers helped them decide the right direction. But you can't give direction until you've decided to flee. You can't be helped in many ways until you have made a decision. You can't be helped in many ways until you have made a decision. You know, in many practical ways, there's an old-timey hymn, I guess, that's built around this. But I just love the homely philosophy that's told in the rather corny story of the Tennessee mountaineer that's on this narrow trail. And as he rounds a sharp bend, he sees a bear, and he pulls back quickly. And being a devout man, sinks down to his knees to pray. And he says, "Dear Lord, thou knowest all things, hence perceive the fix I'm in. And I do ask for help. However, if it be not in the divine wisdom to help me, please don't help the bar. Just stand by and watch the gall darndest fight you ever saw." As you look back in life, you see lots of things that appear to be more than chance. And gee, I think we should be open-minded. We should always ask the question, was this more than chance? But you know something? I really don't think we should try to answer that question. When Jesus went down to Jerusalem, he bumped into Ganed and Goned. And the papers use the specific term, "This meeting took place by apparent chance." And here's what that expression means to me. The Midwayers have done an FBI investigation on this, and they can't find any piano wires. But they're suspicious. Too much good came out of this meeting. It couldn't have been chance, but as far as they can determine, it was chance. And you know, there are wheels within wheels. To us, the Midwayers can do mysterious things. Well, the secondary Midwayers scared the literal bejesus out of the guards around the tomb when they rolled that stone away, you know. And I mean, these Romans and Jewish temple guards really took off on the double for Jerusalem. But I think that there are things that happen on this world that are just as mysterious to the Midwayers as to us. May I give an example of wheels within wheels? I think I can find it. Page 1201. Destiny of personalized adjusters. First of all, on paragraph 3, they state that they are the personalized adjusters are the untrammeled, unassigned, and sovereign stabilizers and compensators of the far-flung universe of universes. They combine the creator and creature experience, existential and experiential. They are conjoint time and eternity beings. They associate the pre-personal and the personal in universe administration. Of course they would, obviously. They remember when they were pre-personal, and now they have personality. Personalized adjusters are the all-wise and powerful executives of the architects of the master universe. They are the personal agents of the full ministry of the universal Father. Personal, pre-personal, and super-personal. Remember our discussion in the foreword? These are the three levels on which God functions. And they all converge in the thought adjuster. They are the personal ministers of the extraordinary, the unusual, and the unexpected throughout all the realms of the transcendental Absonite spheres of the domain of God the Ultimate, even to the levels of God the Ultimate, God the Absolute. Now, on page 1305, hang on to 1201, we're coming back there. They're discussing about how don't count on too much other than justice in the operation of providence. In other words, it's the function of the Trinity of the Supreme Being, and it deals with a total. And on the second paragraph, on page 1305, they warn you that one-eyed jacks may be wild in this deal, even though they usually aren't. And they say, nevertheless, the Father, as a person, may at any time interpose a fatherly hand in the stream of cosmic events, all in accordance with the will of God, and in consonance with the wisdom of God, and as motivated by the love of God. And I think the hand which the Father interposes in the stream of cosmic events would likely be a personalized adjuster. Let's read on. These personalized adjusters are the exclusive beings of the universes who embrace within their being all the known relationships of personality. They are omnipersonal. They are before personality, pre-personal. They are personality, endowed by the Father. And they are after personality, super-personal, as in the life of eventuated transcendental beings. They minister the personality of the universal Father as in the eternal past, the eternal present, and the eternal future. Seldom are the personalized adjusters seen at large in the universe. Occasionally they consult with the Ancients of Days, and sometimes the personalized adjusters of the sevenfold Creator Sons come to the headquarters worlds of the constellations to confer with the Verandadect rulers. And this next paragraph is the one I'm leading into. You know that on this world we have in residence a Verandadect Son. Same order as rules the constellations. He's here as an observer. At any time in his judgment that he thinks it's necessary, he can, in effect, walk into the presence of the resident Governor General and say, I'm taking over. He supersedes the resident Governor General. And this is the inauguration of a Verandadect regency on the planet. And he is the boss. These regencies are of limited duration. Now let's read. When the planetary Verandadect observer of Urantia, the Most High Custodian, who not long since assumed an emergency regency on your world, asserted his authority in the presence of the resident Governor General, he began his emergency administration of Urantia with a full staff of his own choosing. He immediately assigned to all his associates and assistants their planetary duties. But he did not choose the 3 personalized adjusters who appeared in his presence the instant he assumed his regency. He did not even know they would thus appear, for they did not so manifest their divine presence at the time of a previous regency. And the Most High Regent did not assign service or designate duties for these volunteer personalized adjusters. Nevertheless, these 3 omnipersonal beings were among the most active of the numerous orders of celestial beings then serving on Urantia. In other words, at the time of this regency, I would assume that the architects of the Master Universe took cognizance of some problems and dispatched 3 beings who are described as their all-wise and powerful executives. Personalized adjusters are the all-wise and powerful executives of the architects of the Master Universe. We don't know how a midwear would plan and think. Even a secondary midwear, 37,000 years old, much less a primary. I don't believe that the midwears altogether understand the plans of a Verandadect Son, who is altogether older. These Verandadect Sons are among the oldest natives in the local universe. Gee, they must, Michael was here 400 billion years ago. The oldest inhabited worlds date from 200 billion years ago. I would say that the orders of local universe sonship might have an age intermediate between those 2 dates. If you ask me to guess, I would say the Melchizedeks, Verandadeks, Lenanadeks are about 300 billion years of age. This is an awful lot older than the midwear, isn't it? All right, and here's another level. I don't think this veranda deck region had any idea what these personalized adjusters were up to, because they're executing the mandates of the second level of the firehouse. They are taking a transcendent time view of the problems of this work. Let's read. At the universe level, page 351. This level embraces the 7 master architects of the 7 super-universes, who now as a group spend about equal time in the company of the 7 master spirits on Paradise, and with the 7 supreme executives on the 7 special worlds of the infinite spirit. They are the super coordinators of the grand universe.
The grand.
Mhm. Here's the way I view it. The ancients of days, the creator sons, are primarily concerned with the 7 super universes in terms of their finite evolution. But at the same time, the absonite development of these areas is being foreshadowed, and the architects continue to function in terms of the problems of today which pertain to the ages of the future. And these future ages sometimes cast their shadow across the terrain of today's experience. Midsoniters, I think, really belong to the next universe age. Some of these the creature trinitized sons of destiny definitely do. Some of the events of today are, in terms of this universe age, no more than seeds. The flowering is as of the next universe age, but the seeds are present today.
Is that part of the supreme growing or what?
That's part of the ultimate growing.
Oh.
Remember, God the ultimate is growing now, along with God the supreme, but is present in Havona today, and is growing in the super universes today. Of course, his growth is much less apparent than the growth of the supreme.
Are they proportionate?
Ma'am, if the supreme being is 20% here, I would say that the ultimate is 1% here. Something like that. Those are crude.
Where's the rest of
The
it?
being is 80% unfinished. The ultimate is better than 99% unfinished. But there's some of the ultimate here, and there's some ultimate growth going on concurrently with the growth of the supreme. There's some growth going on in the absolute too, and that's even more attenuate. These things are going on all the time on all levels, and that's why I think every now and then the architects of the master universe sit in the poker game through their deputy, a personalized adjuster. And I'll bet you this veranda deck was just about dropped his teeth when this happened. Yeah.
When did this veranda deck come in? When did this happen?
Well, this paper is dated. We'll see if we can find it. Long since. Now let's see what the date of this writing is. Not long before 1935 of your Rancha time. Maybe it was during World War I. Who knows?
Oh, yeah.
Definitely the Regency was over by 1935.
Even though,
By the time of the writing, these 3 personalized adjusters had left the
Oh,
planet.
I see.
This would fit in very nicely with World War I. That's not long since 1935, and their function would have been, by 1935, spoken of in the past tense. At the time of the writing, they weren't here anymore. But during their stay, they really had at it.
well, factories,
Well, they called it an emergency regency anyway, which was
Yeah,
for a limited time.
these veranda deck regencies intrigue me very, very much. While we're on them, if you look at page 1250, the introduction to Seraphic Planetary Government, I get an awful kick out of, they take inventory of 7 reasons why this world is really offbeat. First of page 1250. First of all, we were a life modification sphere. Second, we got involved in the Lucifer rebellion. Third, Adam defaulted. Fifth, the Creator Son bestowed himself here. And he carries the title Planetary Prince of Urantia. Sixth, we got a special relationship with 24 ex-natives, or, well, that isn't 100% true, acting as a board of directors. And to use a British term, one of their number is present every 100 years as a resident director. That's the English term for general manager. Resident Governor General. On this world, we did get some advantage because Michael is planetary prince. I suspect he was the one that caused a divisional headquarters of the archangels to be located here. You wouldn't expect to find that on an inhabited world. But in locating that divisional headquarters here, we got a communication circuit, the archangel circuit, and we're not totally isolated.
Do you have any guess on when that might have come into being here?
Sometime after he left this world. Sometime during the last 1900 years. I would guess not long after he left. And then Mechavenda Melchizedek, who lived in the days of Abraham, has been designated as Michael's deputy, vicegerent planetary prince. That's a real inventory of offbeat characteristics. We didn't even start out as typical, and we have grown less and less typical with the passage of time. On page 1253, they talk about the Most High Observer. Way back in the days of the planetary rebellion, the story of Van gave me the answer to my personal major philosophic problem on religion. I had always resisted religion because it seemed to me that when you embraced a religion, you tied a bandage around your eyes and groped forward mumbling credo credamus. You know, I believe, we believe. And I could never abdicate my intelligence and my judgment. And I could never reconcile this problem with what seemed to me to be a problem of faith and judgment until I read the story of Van, which to me is the most important single story in the Urantia book, because it enabled me to have faith. You see, if Van had had a bandage around his eyes and just said credo credamus, he would have gone along with the game, because Caligastia was his boss. Caligastia held a commission from Gabriel as planetary prince of Urantia. And in case Van had any doubt, which he did, he appealed to Lucifer. Now please remember, Lucifer was the highest universe administrator that Van had had any personal contact with. He was a Jerusalem citizen. And what was the answer to this appeal? A command for unquestioning obedience to Caligastia. And here's where I get the difference between the blindfold of belief and the liberation of faith. The papers make that distinction. Belief limits and faith liberates the soul. I imagine the reading of Lucifer's reply was a traumatic experience to Van. It was a hell of a shock. And I'll bet you he sat down and did some thinking.
Did he gasp for breath?
Right. And then he got up and he drew an indictment of Dalagastia, Caligastia, and Lucifer, and appealed to the rulers of the constellation. And they promptly replied, But during the time of the transit of this reply between Edentia and Urantia and Devantia, the circuit supervisor on Salvington pulled the master switch, and this message was marooned in a relay center somewhere between here and Edentia. As the papers say, they never did get the darn thing out until recently. And so, where is Van? For 7 years, Van and his associates had to sweat it out. And this intrigues me. When did the Constellation government intervene? They did not intervene until every last free will creature on this world who understood the issue had made a decision. This didn't apply to evolutionary man. I don't think the average evolutionary man was at all involved in this rebellion, didn't even know it was happening. But all those physical and superphysical beings who understood the issue had to make a decision. And the minute that decision was made, and this was after 7 years of sweating it out, a Verondadek son arrived here and stripped the shoulder boards off Caligastia and seized authority on this planet. And ever since then, there's been a Verondadek here. Not always an active authority. That's what they mean when they say, there is still resident on your ranch, a Verondadek son. But, yes.
On what early training did Van faith build, grow?
Well, let's see what the papers say. As far as I'm concerned, this is St. Van, you know, to me. Yeah, page 757. Paragraph 3. Caligastia, with a maximum of intelligence and a vast experience in universe affairs, went astray, embraced sin. Amadon, with a minimum of intelligence and utterly devoid of universe experience, remained steadfast in the service of the universe and in loyalty to his associate. Van utilized both mind and spirit in a magnificent and effective combination of intellectual determination and spiritual insight, thereby achieving an experiential level of personality realization of the highest attainable order. Mind and spirit, when fully united, are potential for the creation of superhuman values, even Morantia realities. And Van did this without the help of a thought adjuster. His adjuster was standing by on Jerusalem. Van was a Jerusalem citizen, Mansion World graduate. This Verondadek observer just plain can take over. He can seize planetary government at a time of grave crisis. And this has happened 33 times in the history of Urantia. Yes.
If Van were an ex-mortal, is there any evidence pointing towards the fact that he might have had experience on a rebellion-tested planet before?
No, even if he had, no. However, Van had some special. They took a real hard look at Van. Van, you know, was Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. That was his title. He was the chairman of the 10th Commission, which was the Supreme Court of the planet. It was a court of appeals for all other 9 special commissions. Its powers were wide, being entrusted with all matters of earthly concern, not specifically assigned to the other groups. This selected corps had been approved for the Constellation Fathers of Edentia before they were authorized to assume the functions of the Supreme Court on Urantia. If you want to teach this book and I think be useful to your fellow men in the service of God, in heaven's name, don't go around with a long face. The whole idea, for example, of being real solemn one day a week is something which Christianity got from Judaism, and the Jews got it during the Babylonian captivity. And it's not the holiness of the Sabbath. The Babylonians thought that the Sabbath was the day of bad luck, when the evil spirits were abroad. And a smart, sophisticated guy would keep his ears tucked in. He would stay at home and do nothing, lest he encounter evil spirits. The reason for Sabbath restrictions is not respect of deity in the beginning. It's the avoidance of the evil eye and bad luck. You want me to read you out of the book? It's in here. Or you take my word. Put a grin on your face. Jesus never went around and said, approach people with a sad countenance. He said, be of good cheer. He didn't say, worry about your salvation. He said, fear not. I think the master had a grin on his face a good deal of the time, or a smile. I think he was a cheerful human being. Number 3. Don't take advantage of people. Don't overwhelm them. Don't confuse fact and truth. Don't clobber small-minded people with a lot of fancy-pants language. Don't overawe people or overwhelm people. Jesus gave this advice. Always respect the personality of man. In bringing men into the kingdom, do not lessen or destroy their self-respect. Take care that you do not wound the self-respect of timid and fearful souls. Do not indulge in sarcasm at the expense of my simple-minded brethren. Be not cynical with my fear-ridden children. Be kind to people. In being kind to people, treat them as people. There was a little sawed-off tax collector at Jericho by the name of Zacchaeus, whom I suspect had been guilty of those shenanigans which were typical of those people who purchased the right to collect taxes and then put on the squeeze. And that's one of the reasons tax collectors had such a low social status, about halfway between a saloon keeper and a brothel keeper today. I'll bet Jesus could have preached sermons at Zacchaeus until the proverbial eternal tropics froze over without making too much of a dent on him. But he completely unglued Zacchaeus. You remember the little shrimp had climbed a sycamore tree because he wanted to see the big shot from Galilee going through Jericho? And what did Jesus do? He stopped under the sycamore tree. I think it's one of the funniest episodes in the scripture. And he looked up and he said, Zacchaeus, come down. He said, I want to stay at your house tonight. He honored Zacchaeus. And what was Zacchaeus' reaction at being honored? He told him, he said, if I've gypped anybody, let me know and I'll make a threefold, fourfold restitution. Jesus showed Zacchaeus he liked him. And it did more good than all the sermons Jesus could have preached. It's a good illustration of the fact that Jesus' life is greater even than Jesus' teachings. If you want to be useful in the teaching of this book, or what's even more important, useful to your fellow men in the service of God. And this book is only a part of it. By no means all of it. Bishops were the most important official in each city. A metropolitan, that's the old title, archbishop we're more familiar with. was the exact parallel of a Roman provincial governor. In larger areas, they had what they called primates, who presided at a national conclave. The title persists in the title of Canterbury, primate of all England. York presides at the conclaves of the northern bishops. The early church modeled itself in the West on the Roman Empire, and its structure survived the fall of Rome. But it didn't come in a hurry, did it? It came slowly. It had many struggles. And I think there's a parallel. We have the book now, I think, because we needed to train teachers. We have the book now because we need the book